Hello and welcome back to the channel, and today's video is going to be learning to use Python's fstring function to simplify formatting string concatenation with variables. So in Python, if you're at least moderately familiar with it, you know that when you print out a statement onto the screen, it needs to come in the format of text. If there's any kind of like including a variable with a statement. So what I mean by that, just really briefly, is if you want to print a number that's in the format of a number, that can be the only thing in your print statement. So if I want to print 12, I can do that. But if I want to print, hey, 12, then what this is going to do is this is going to error out because now you have a text and you have a number. And so the easiest way to concatenate two things, which is just the fancy code word for sticking them together, if you're familiar with Excel, you've probably seen concatenation, is just the plus sign in Python. So you would do hey plus 12, but then it tells you, even in the error statement, depending on what IDE you're using, you can only concatenate strings, not integers. So what you have to do is you have to use the str function, which is Python's built-in string converter, and you put whatever you want inside of the parentheses of str, and now at least we have valid concatenation. It'll say hey 12. Okay, so that is kind of how to use the str function. That's basic Python concatenation. But let's say you wanted to use some variables in there. So we'll make my string, and we'll just have the text inside of that variable say example string. Well, right away you'll see that you can concatenate using this very basic method. You can say hey plus my string, and this is going to go no problem. But if we had a number as well, so we'll make my number, and we'll pick a random number like 420, and we'll say, hey, my number, okay? And what we're gonna find is we're getting the same error as when we put just a 12 in there because it's an integer. So we use that str again, just like before, and now it's valid. But there's a better way, because when you want to use various different types of variables, so let's get one more in here. Let's make a Boolean, and these are really the three most common types of Python variable now. We have a string, a number, and a Boolean. And let's just set it equal to true, because a Boolean is true false. You should know that. And let's say we wanted to have hey plus number plus my string, and we want all of these in the same in the same thing. What you'll see, it looks pretty goofy. There's no space between the string and the number, so we'd have to put a space. We'd have to have a whole nother plus two quotes plus just a space to have a space in there, and just to get what we wanted. Now the thing that Python 3.0 and onward added, which if you're using an older version of Python, you can do a like string where at the end you do dot format. It's an older method of doing it. I would just look for an example on Stack Overflow or something if you're using Python 2. If you have a reason to use Python 2 though, you probably know enough about Python that like, why are you watching this video? The new one that if you're downloading Python from the internet today, you're getting a version of Python 3, has something in it called an fstring. And all you have to do, the F stands for format, I'm pretty sure. All you have to do is put an F in before your quotations. And I think I've talked about this before in Python, but you can use a single quote or a double quote. They're totally equivalent. I know in C#, if you use the single quotes, it's like a character string where it can only be one. There's no difference in Python. So you put an F before it, and now instead of that str my number, you're saying everything inside of this text that I type in and variables that I put inside of these curly brackets are going to get formatted into a string. So let's put my number inside those curly brackets, and then we can just keep typing. So whereas up here we had to have, hey, stop the quotations, use a plus sign, str, format my number, then another plus sign, then a space, and then add my string, we just say, hey, my number, hit the space key, and then my string. And just doing this is going to give us, you'll see when you run it, it's exactly the same. But where this really comes in handy is, like, say you have some function going on where you pull in 5 or 6 inputs and all of those are going to get reported in your output statement. Let's just add a third variable into this. So we need another plus, another space, and then another plus, and then another str format, and then you would put my Boolean in there. Well, in here, that whole thing we just added is just the space key, the curly brackets, and then my Boolean. Okay, and we're not even actually doing anything particularly productive with this formatting. Like if we wanted to say, hey, my number is my number, and then a comma, and then my string is, and then my string, and then and my Boolean is. Okay, every place that we had that just space in there, we would put our text in there, and you have to make sure spacing is correct, and you'll run it and you'll see like, oh, 2 variables end up like jammed up against text because you didn't put the right spaces. An fstring is just a full formatted function where you get to see your string as it's going to look. You don't have this goofy str every time there's a non-string variable. So this really is quite a bit better. And one step further, even inside these curly brackets, you can do function level things. Like you could, instead of my number, you could say my number minus 10, because this code doesn't process until you run it. So like if my number is 420, you could say my number minus, I don't know, it's a random number. And then you could say my string is, and you could use things like the string conversions, which there's tons of ways to play around with strings. There's a ton of literature out there on it, but this one I just put in, .upper, is going to convert our string to uppercase. And you'll see when we run it, it does that math, it does that subtraction that we put in the curly brackets, and it does the upper conversion inside the curly brackets. That's pretty cool. So it really is, the F string is a much better alternative to traditional concatenation in terms of combining text with variables in output strings. So I hope you found this useful. If you did, feel free to check out the channel for tons of other great tutorials and content like this. Make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a ton as we're a fairly new YouTube channel. And if anything in this video confused you, or you want to see anything in particular in the future, just let me know about it in the comments below. I'll get back to you as soon as possible, and I really appreciate you checking out the channel. As always, good luck with your code, and thanks for watching. Thanks, bye.